Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, friends and neighbors. This is WeatherBrains, the pre-show for Monday, April 18th, 2016. And yes, Brian and I were wearing the same shirt. Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, it's close. I have a little white stripe around my collar.
Oh, you do? Yes, you have I have the black stripe here. I'm the black hat guy.
Are we going to play like the Sneetches?
Yes.
You got to change yours.
So Bill Murray's gone. He's
flying.
Yeah, Bill he's gotten too uppity or something. He never shows up anymore. I guess he was here last week, though.
He was here last week, yes.
And John Scala is out. I think everybody else is here.
I think so. Although none of them showed up so far.
Got to see if I can get our guest on here.
I want you to know you're the lucky winner tonight.
The lucky winner.
Yes. Your name.
Who you win?
Your name, James, according to BuzzFeed, is the 5th sexiest name.
What?
James, your name is the 5th sexiest name on a list of 100 sexy names. Kevin comes in.
This is getting very uncomfortable.
Kevin comes in at 45th. John comes in at 50, and I come in at 71. But Nate, Rick, and Bill are no-shows.
Well, that just speaks volumes, I guess. Wow. I'm a babe magnet.
I don't know what volume it speaks, but I think it does speak volumes, yes.
It's the glare off this old head. It blinds them. They can't see anything.
Quite a nice editorial you wrote, by the way.
Yeah, I see a little, and that's my pick of the week, by the way. So,
I kind of thought you might do that. Now I got to go back and look it up.
I'm seeing too many people that are getting discouraged, and I'm seeing too many lazy people. So it's kind of, I don't know, just.
Well, the lazy ones.
I get in here and I just write. So.
The lazy ones will weed themselves out.
Yeah, they won't be around much longer.
Because they won't be around long.
So we got a hot topic tonight involving one of our own. I love it.
Yeah.
Not directly involving one of our own, but indirectly.
I wish you'd sent that list earlier. I would like to have read up on it. Thanks for sending it, though. I'm going to include it in the show notes, if that's all right. Rick?
Yeah. It's a summary of, some of the events.
Yes, I'm looking at these links that you sent here. We love controversy. That's what makes for good radio. These boring book review shows nobody listens, but these this will spike the audience here. The storm chasing frenzy is causing headaches for emergency personnel. The county is inundated with these people. Inundated.
Mm-hmm. No.
We do not think storm chasing is a good idea. That's the quote that we'll ask Rick about. Uh-oh. Corey, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Lovely.
See how easy this is? Nothing to it.
Because I had to use my iPad. I had the microphone all set to go and the camera and everything. And
keep the microphone there. It looks good.
Yeah, about to say that. People will just think you got a big mic. That's a fancy mic there.
It's pretty nice. Do a little radio forecasting now and then, So.
Wow, you got your pop filter and everything else. That's cool.
Yeah.
So wow, we're all here. The gang's all here. People are watching. It's
Kevin's not here yet.
Well, but I mean, we just have one guest. I think Corey's the only guest on here tonight.
I think he is. You're absolutely right.
On time.
Everybody else bailed. They said, Corey's on, we're out.
Yeah. They ran
Corey may be coming close to a record in the terms of the number he's been on, because this is his fifth.
Really? I thought it was only 4. So.
Well, I show you on. Hold on a minute. I show you on. I've got him here somewhere. Hold on.
If somebody's on SNL 5 times, they get some special awards. Maybe a
he pays us more. 385, 315, 126, and 117. That doesn't count tonight, so that's 5.
Okay.
At least your name was mentioned. That could be good or bad.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you guys see me at all?
Nope.
Aww.
We can hear you well.
Oh, that's good.
We just have your picture.
Yeah, you got that fancy glamour shot. I need a glamour shot.
That's an old picture.
But it looks so good.
You should all get one that looks just like that.
Exactly. We need to get a shot. We need a shot that looks like Aubrey.
We call that episode Aubrey Quadrupled.
Let's see.
You have to get your head at an angle. I say that's the first thing you have to do. Or you can just rotate it in, some image editing program.
I don't think that'll work for you, James, because your hair won't flow like hers is.
Let's say, you need the flowing locks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing I hate to say about you, James, you are lock impaired.
That doesn't hurt my feelings. The truth is the truth. It is what it is.
My husband is lock impaired too. It's okay.
Yeah, hair's overrated.
It is. It's just a pain.
You guys probably spend hours on your hair. I'm free.
It is ridiculous how much time.
Free. So where are you? Yeah, Corey.
Almost there.
Brother, you stay in this business long enough, you'll look just like this. So Aubrey, are you in the studio tonight, or?
I am. I am in the studio tonight. I got home about around midnight last night.
Awesome. Well, if we don't have video, that'll work. I mean, it's cool.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, I'll be in and out. I've been out of town. We had a bachelorette thing, and then we're still finishing up the home, putting the house back together. So I am, I think, a third of the way through my emails.
I want to hear more about this bachelorette thing.
Yeah. Give us all the gory details.
Forget the storm chaser thing, the bachelorette thing. This is what's happening.
We were probably the tamest bachelorette group you would ever see.
I don't believe that.
Other than maybe a group that was too young to drink.
What do you call those male strippers?
Oh yeah, no.
Chippendales.
Chippendales. Yeah, you didn't have those over, did you?
No, we didn't. Actually, one of the girls that was getting married, her parents have a timeshare, so we were lucky enough for them to gift us the timeshare place on the beach, so we could all spend the weekend together and hang out and do karaoke and just kind of hang out and relax and not get too crazy.
Okay, we
believe you
for it.
Not get too crazy. I made it home. We'll say that.
There you go. No jail time or
yeah,
arrests.
I did not have to use the bail money that I brought.
Nice to see you were prepared.
I am, and that's probably why I don't have my camera up.
All right. Well, welcome. Let's see. Welcome to our television viewers. It is now 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes after the hour. Do you know where your children are? Speaking, and look who popped in right when I asked that question. The accelerant.
Mm-hmm.
What's the question?
Kevin, are you cranky? Uh-oh, no audio. We can't hear you, man. So Kevin's in the middle of this storm chaser kerfuffle thing, so gotta have some audio.
I don't think I'm in that. I think our good friend poor Rick is in the middle of it.
You're just at ground zero.
Yeah, you're at the center of the controversy.
I'm on the edge of it, I think. I'm not in the middle of it either.
Say it again, Rick?
I said I'm not in the middle of it either. I'm on the edge.
I think Rick needs to. Rick, are you the one that's going to explain this? Like, give us the backstory?
Maybe. If you're asking if you can do it, yes, you can.
No, I'm not, because as I said, we had weather last week, and I was passing a kidney stone all week, and I had other things, and so I kind of was on the periphery of it, and I don't think I'll do it justice.
Corey, you're up on things, aren't you?
I try to be.
Maybe between the two of us together, we can explain it. Or
yeah, because we'll have to give everybody kind of some background to it, and then
Corey, I'm not sure you're on that mic that's in front of you there.
I'm not. Span wanted it as a prop.
It's a fake. It's just a total prop.
It's going away.
What mic are you on? Because it sounds kind of distant.
It's on a distant iPad mic.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't get technology to cooperate earlier.
And look, Aubrey's camera's working. You look so nice this evening.
Hi. I tried to, look professional, so wouldn't feel bad about myself from the weekend.
Okay.
You don't fit in on this show, though.
All right, let's get this sucker going, because we are now on television, and welcome to our television viewers. And I'm going to record a couple of channels here, and we are going to make this thing happen. So here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 535. This is going to be a rough one when you botch the opening line.
You're confused already.
Yeah, I am. I just saw a 3. It's 535. 535. We've been doing this way too long. This is for April 18th. 2016. This is always an interesting time of the year. I mean, you get snow, and you get blizzards, and you get tornadoes, and you get floods, and we've basically had most of that here over the past few weeks. Bill Murray is out tonight. Bill is flying somewhere. He's in midair. We have Dr. John Scala, who is out, but I think everybody else is here. And look who's back. Aubrey is here after a wild week.
It's been crazy.
So, girls' night out, huh?
2 girls' nights out.
Little bachelorette action. She's being very quiet and shy and withdrawn about this, but
I'm still recovering. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not recovering. Actually, I did really good. I didn't spend too much money. I didn't drink too much.
I'm doing a law enforcement search now to see if there was anything you're not reporting.
I told you I didn't use the bail money that I brought.
But that doesn't mean that you didn't end up in some law enforcement report somewhere.
You got an early show title there. I didn't use the bail money.
No, that's awesome. No, you think she's the one that has the most sense on the whole show. That she's the one that would not get in trouble. So, Aubrey, we're proud of you, and thanks for joining us. And welcome back to the world of broadcast meteorology.
Just a couple more weddings to go this year.
Wow. Brian, remember what it was like when we were young? We'd go to weddings. Brian, did you ever go to weddings when you were young?
Oh, yes.
I bet you Brian used to be a wedding singer, didn't you?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I'm paid not to sing, actually.
Well, actually, I'm gonna be in a wedding in Wichita in August, and I had already mentioned this to Kevin, but Rick, I might try and stop in for a visit. So
you definitely should do that.
So you'll have to sing at the wedding, Rick.
Yeah, so we can all meet in Oklahoma City in August. Perfect time of the year for Oklahoma City.
It's lovely here in August.
I bet.
It's about 118 degrees.
Yeah, we definitely have to try to do
that. Brian Peters is the internationally beloved meteorologist, the storm spotter trainer extraordinaire. And Brian, you were out doing some talking today, weren't you?
Oh, yes. I had a great experience. I went to visit the Southern company who owns Georgia Power, Alabama Power, Gulf Power, and I think is it Mississippi Power? Is that the name of the one over there?
Yes.
I think so. Something like that. And wow, their operational facility is absolutely awe-inspiring. It's got like 200 feet of television monitors monitoring just about everything that you would want to know about the power grid. Fabulous.
Yeah, I've been down to their trading floor, which is fascinating. People have seen the New York Stock Exchange and the Merck and all these places. Well, you ought to go down to the energy trading floor. That is just fascinating.
That's amazing.
And obviously, weather plays a big role in all of that. Kevin Selly is in Wichita Falls, and Kevin, we've got an interesting episode. We're talking about storm chasers and controversy and Wichita Falls, and in the middle of all this, you were passing a kidney stone.
Yes, that's true.
Which was more painful?
We had, I think actually the most painful. Every event that goes by now, I just get more and more frustrated at this social media hell that we have taken ourselves to. I understand getting pictures, I get it, but I'm very frustrated by that altogether. We've had several rounds of severe weather, a couple of tornado warnings here and there, some heavy rain here and there as well. And so in the midst of all that, there was some controversy that Rick and our guest are going to discuss with us tonight. It seems like people are fleeing this episode. Usually people want to come in and talk about it, but I think we have people fleeing this one going, no, I don't want to talk about it. And I will admit to sort of being on the edge of it, but not understanding fully, so I'm anxious to hear the explanation.
Wait, was fleeing an option in this case?
No. It's too late to hang up. You cannot hang up, Rick. You are here.
It's not in your contract, Rick. You can't do that.
To pay more attention.
And again, we've obviously had some major flooding in Texas, and we'll talk with Kevin about that during the weather roundup here. But Rick Smith is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, the weather capital of the universe.
The weather capital of Cleveland County, Oklahoma, at least. I don't know about the universe, man. Looking at Houston today, that was, I don't want that to happen to anybody, but goodness, that's glad that wasn't happening in our area today. But yeah, it's been a relatively quiet spring, knock on wood. But we did have a little activity last weekend and some more this weekend, and we'll talk more about that as we go along.
Yep. So again, since Bill's not here, Bill is like the NPR guy that does all the research and brings in the guests and has all these canned questions. I don't do it that way. We just fly by the seat of our pants when I'm driving this thing. So Corey Hartman is with us, and a lot of you know Corey. He's been on the show probably more times than most, and that could be good or that could be bad. I don't know. But Corey is with Severe Studios, and he is in his Severe Studio. Look at the logo. That's nice. Wow.
Yeah. This is world headquarters here. So.
Wow. See, we both were in the world headquarters. This is the WeatherBrains world headquarters, and you're in the Severe Studios world headquarters. But first off, tell us. Let's just do a basic plug here for those that don't know. What is Severe Studios?
Severe Studios is a company that basically sells weather video to TV stations, to local, national networks, and documentaries and that sort of thing. And the live streaming is kind of our forte. That's kind of our main thing, and we think we do it pretty well. And it really allows people to kind of see what the storm is doing for themselves. And some of that takes some of the drama that we're going to talk about tonight off the table.
Drama is the word. But let me ask you this. It just seems like there's so many of these things now. I know you, and I know what you do, and your streams are great. But it just seems like everybody has one of these services now. I mean, everybody, and I don't know if they're changing the names or changing the owners. It's so confusing to me. I can't keep up with it. But it seems like you've been fairly steady in this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're going into, I believe, year number 9, so, almost a decade, with the website, and 9 years doing streaming, about 8 years where we've had it open to the public. So, yeah, it's been around a while, and like you said, a lot of places have come and gone, but we just keep doing our thing over here, so.
So let me ask you the nosy personal question here. So let's say that I want to be a storm chaser guy. And I got me a fancy rig, and I've got me a streaming setup, and I want to make some money. I want to sell my stuff to Kevin Selly in Wichita Falls, Texas. So how does that work? Like, I come to you, and I want to get involved in your network. Do you just accept anybody off the street, or do you have a process where you choose some people and some people don't make it? And how does the money distribution work? Is it a split? Explain the whole thing for those that don't get it.
Sure, and full disclosure, Kevin is the client, but We do, a lot of work with local TV stations. That's kind of, one of the things that started the company. And, but we don't just take everybody. A lot of companies do. They'll just let anybody that signs up go out there. I mean, we'll let anybody stream. But if you're going to be on the media team, if you're going to be selling video, we kind of like you to have some media background. We've got a lot of ex-radio people, ex-TV people that are out there doing their thing, and we don't want to scare the old ladies, and we don't want to give false reports, and we don't want to drop F-bombs on the air. So I mean, it's pretty important that those bases are covered. So we do have a little bit of a process to go through. We used to vote on it way back in the day, but now it's basically just me. I look at their past video work and just see if it's somebody that should be on the team or not.
So you say Kevin's a client. Does he pay you, and then you pay the folks that are out in the field? Is that how it works?
Right. His, Severe Studios will invoice the TV station, and then for brokering it, I take a percentage, and the rest of it goes back to the chaser.
So who's your big competitor now? Who's the biggest streamer group other than you?
We're a little different because we have a streaming platform and the brokering side. So there's TVN, the Reed Timmer Group, which Reed's a good friend of mine, and so he's always been streaming since about a month after we started. We got it up first, but whatever. So we have a good relationship, but they're out there. And then there's some competition on the brokering side. There's probably 3 or 4 other people that do what I do on the selling side.
So is there any money? The one thing I can't understand, it seems like there are 10 million of these people in the field, and they all brag about how they're making all this money. And is there a lot of money to be made in this for the average guy that's got a camera in the field and has had some spotter training, or how does this work, the business end of it?
Yeah, there's certain people that are better at it than others, right? Just like in anything. The example that I always go back to is the late Andy Gabrielson. He was pretty close to making a full-time salary off of chasing. There's the more you go out, the more expenses you have, so you really have to watch things. He had the benefit of being able to work on his dad's farm, planting and harvesting. Seemed to kind of go on, kind of bookend the chase season. So he was able to make a little bit doing that and put it all toward chasing and really get out there and sell a lot of crazy tornado video.
All right, well, let's bring in Rick Smith, and I'm going to let you and Rick, I don't know who wants to start, but we've had a little issue involving storm chasers and some things that you said, Rick, and one of you guys just kind of set this whole thing up. Kevin, I don't know who wants to start, but you all are out there in the middle of it. I'm kind of on the periphery, so.
Excuse me.
Goodness.
Wow.
Well, Kevin really doesn't want to talk about this.
Rick,
to
you're up.
extreme measures.
That was really bad. Well, what I know of the beginning of it is that there was an article in the Times Record newspaper about a week ago talking about primarily, well, let me give you a little baseline. The Wichita County, the county that I'm in, Wichita County spotter group, the hams, have their ham shack in our building. It's next to our studio here. And so they come in here and they work out of our building and they run their spotter network there. And as I understand it, somebody was using that frequency, which was closed off at the time, who has used it in the past, and so they had to run this guy off of the frequency. And there was a little bit of what seemed to me, I've listened to a little bit of that audio, seemed to be, he said, oh, well, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be here. And they said, thanks, get off. And he said, well, I'm trying to help, thanks, get off. Well, I'm just helping and trying to be a nice guy, thanks, get off. And it just seemed like he was leading that on a little bit. And that caused some problems. And so somebody at the newspaper heard about that and wrote an article saying, well, somebody had to be run off of the chaser group. And so they got comment from Charlie Byers, who runs the spotter group, and then they got some comments from Rick, and Rick can tell what he said in a minute, but that seemed to be the flashpoint for a bunch of people coming in and attacking Rick, who had no business doing so, because Rick has no dog in this fight. He's not monetarily assigned to this like some of these chasers are. And it seemed like there were some attacks on him that were unnecessary and against the Weather Service as well. And I took offense to that. But it seemed like it got a little even hotter than that. Rick, am I setting it up properly?
I think that's the beginning. That's basically how it started. We had a severe weather event on April 10th, which was a week ago Sunday when we were recording this. Severe thunderstorms down in, well, lots of storms all over the place, but southwest Oklahoma, western North Texas, and Daniel Shaw, who is an Australian storm chaser, he comes here evidently every spring and spends a good part of the March through June time period here chasing. Very well respected in the chaser community, very experienced. He was out chasing and attempted to make a report, and you kind of described that. Seems like there was 2 or 3 things that kind of happened, and it all started with the it all started with that event, but it was kind of brought up publicly with the newspaper article. I got a phone call on Monday morning from the Times Record News, the Wichita Falls newspaper. We talk to them all the time, and I know Lynn Walker. I know people at the paper. That's part of my job, is to know these people. And I did what I thought was a very standard interview. I've done 153 and a half interviews throughout my Weather Service career, where I'm asked about, what do you think about storm chasers? What do you think about, the standard answer is, we don't condone storm chasing. And I wish people weren't out there doing it, or I don't want people out there to do it. I forgot exactly what I said. That's a standard, cookie cutter, talking points kind of answer, because that's the answer we give. I'm obviously not going to say, yeah, storm chasing's cool, go out and try it, it's, go out and give it a shot and see what happens. I'm not going to do that, and in my official position. So, and then I also praised the spotter group, Charlie Byers and the Wichita County Amateur Radio Emergency Service. I've been going down there around Valentine's Day on a Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning every year for the past 14 years, and we have a very close working relationship with them. So my three bullets in the article were, we don't condone chasing, we don't want people out there doing it, and we like the spotters in Wichita County. In the context of the article that was written, my comments were evidently taken to be very negative in the chaser community. They were taken as being, I don't like chasers, chasers are bad, spotters are better than chasers. I don't know, this my interpretation of the feedback I got pretty quickly, indirectly on Twitter and other ways. But so I think that was kind of my involvement in it. There are other issues that are continue ongoing even today with what's going on with the amateur radio group. Are they allowed to keep someone from reporting on their frequency? That's not really my area of expertise. We can talk about it. And then the whole, who's better? Who do you trust more? Do you trust a spotter report more? Do you trust a chaser report more? So there's lots of issues to get into, but my direct part of it was those 3 things I told the newspaper reporter, and the reaction, the feedback that I got from that.
So it seems like the line that I'm seeing in some of these articles, Rick, it says, we do not think storm chasing is a good idea. We don't condone it.
Right.
And apparently that's what set some of these people off, right?
Yeah, and you can never, when you're giving an interview, and you know this, if you're giving an interview to the newspaper, I could talk for 30 minutes. They're not going to put everything that I say in there. I've gotten used, especially with a topic like this, to talking in sound bites. We don't encourage people to go chasing. When I say that, I'm not saying I don't want Corey to go out chasing anymore, or I don't want Daniel Shaw to be out chasing, or any chaser. Go chasing. Knock yourself out if you're chasing. We love chasers. I mean, we get great information from them. We take their reports. We watch Severe Studios and TVN and streams, and we're using that information. Spotter training would be a horribly boring endurance event for people to sit through every spring if it wasn't for spotters or chasers and their videos and their pictures. So I have nothing against chasers. I just don't want. I'm trying to discourage other people from going out and doing it. There's too many people out there doing it, as it is. Too many people that don't know what they're doing, and a lot of people watch TV and go, "Ooh, cool, tornadoes! I can go drive close to a tornado. I got a car, I got a camera, I can do that." I don't want people doing that, so I'm trying to discourage those people. I'm not telling people that are already chasing to stop. I couldn't do that, and I wouldn't do it if I could. So.
And I think people that know you know exactly what you meant. I mean, so Corey, let me bring you in. So you're the professional chaser guy here. What do you say about this whole issue?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think Rick's interpretation of the way it was, taken by the chaser community was right on. I think that the way it was put into the article, made it sound, like the National Weather Service or Rick specifically maybe was condemning storm chasers as opposed to just not condoning it. And a few people took it quite literally, and some people were pretty fired up about it. And I mean, we could go all over the place with this, but I'm not going to get into the ham radio part. I mean, I think the group there probably does a good job, does what the Weather Service needs them to do. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I'm not a ham personally, but
let's stop. Let me stop you there because I am a ham guy. Mm-hmm. And the way we've always done it, and again, this goes back to the 1970s, and maybe I'm just an old geezer, and Brian, you're in this too. Yep. Brian's got a ham license, but when I was a teenager and I was working net control and we had the ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service Network, up and running, if anybody had a valid report, we would welcome them. We never had a closed operation where, unless you've got a Tuscaloosa County ARES card, you can't join this. I did notice in Dallas when I moved there in the 80s, some of that was races, and it was closed, which I thought was odd. But
and it's still like
anyway, everything we did was open. So this guy came in from the outside, and they would not allow him to check into their network. Kevin, that's what's baffling me. I don't know why somebody would just say you can't give us information.
Well, Rick or Corey's going to have to talk about that because I don't know all the details of it other than, as I understand it, during an event, during severe weather, they close it off at some level. And again, you can't wall it off, but they ask you not to be on that particular frequency because they're obviously trying to use it for storm spotting. This is obviously a very sensitive market. We've had some really big tornadoes here in many years past, and this is why this spotter group was set up and why they're so well respected, because they do their jobs. They don't go out and chase. They go out and they've set up a circumference around the county, and they sit and they wait and they watch and they report and they do their jobs without any hype, without any sensationalism. And don't come after me now, spotters, who are going to say, what about the spotter, or the chasers rather, what about the chasers coming on? I get this, but so back to that point now, Rick or Corey can tell me about that frequency, because I don't know. Did I explain that properly, Rick?
Yeah, I'm a ham, and I don't know all the rules and regulations, but talking to Charlie Byers, who's a friend of ours, he, from what I understand, that net's been run that way since the mid-'70s. 1974, I guess, is when some of this stuff kicked off. So I don't know. I don't know the rules. I know that there's a difference in the way ARES, which is which is a branch of the American Radio Relay League, which deals with amateur radio emergency services. There's also RACES, which is more of a government-affiliated amateur radio group. I know I started off born and raised in the Memphis area and started working at that office, and I know we had issues back in the late 80s, early 90s with ARES versus RACES, and hams not getting along, and this group won't listen to this group's reports and that type of thing. So it's nothing new. I'm not saying it's good, but I don't know all the history and the background and what you can and can't do with those with those nets that go on down there.
Well, it sounds like it makes some sense. I'm sorry, Corey. Some sense to me to say, look, I mean, we're all trying to get to help here, and with the growth of the chaser community, if you say, okay, you can come in on this particular frequency that the spotters are using, and then this guy from Australia comes, and then somebody else hears it, and then the next guy comes, and the next guy comes, and the next guy comes. It's what we're seeing in the storm chasing. No, not all chasers are bad, but if you start cramming that network full of more and more people, it's just going to end up being noise, because some of the hot dogs are going to get in there and think that they need to talk on this. And I completely understand. And I think it's a sign of simple respect to say, look, here are the guys that are out here, even when it's not a big threat, even when there's nothing going on. Just leave them alone. There's plenty of space for you to talk somewhere else. Go off and do it there. And then the other thing that I object to this, and I got to go do the show here in a minute, but the attacks on Rick are inexcusable, and Rick doesn't need me to come to his defense, but the little bit of what I saw in people on Twitter especially trying to have conversations and give him static about this and the National Weather Service position is also inexcusable, especially if you're running one of these chase companies or something like that. You've got a personal interest. I understand you may be trying to protect that personal interest or your business, but coming after Rick for making the comments that he did and that he does, and given Rick's history, I think that that's just inexcusable. And I looked at some of these guys, and I'm not going to mention names because they don't deserve it, but if they want to come on and defend themselves, that's fine. But this one guy, and they're more than welcome, but this one guy runs a chase company, and in his Twitter bio, it says, weather-related, owned and operated by 25-year famed veteran storm chaser, insert name here. That's scary to me. If this guy promotes himself as a famed veteran storm chaser, that's like James introducing himself every time he goes somewhere and says, hi, I'm famed television meteorologist James Spann. That guy is looking out for himself, and if you're thinking about doing a tour, you need to consider stuff like that, because that guy's looking out for the fame. He's not looking out for you. And it's the same thing.
It's like people who list themselves, Kevin, as social media experts or gurus.
And let me finish, because I got to go. There's another guy, and I think it's the guy that had the problem in, and the Weather Service may have been at fault in this a couple of weeks ago with the reports there, but this is another Twitter identifier that identifies himself first thing as close-range storm chaser. That's irresponsible. If you want to do it, that's fine, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to go follow people like this, or you're going to work with people like this, you need to do your homework on it, because those people are not looking out for your interests. And I got to go do this show now that I've dropped an accelerant bomb.
Yep, and I'm gonna respond to all of that here. I have 4 pages of notes here, and who knows how much of this stuff we'll actually get to. But Kevin will have to watch the archive to hang up and listen kind of thing here. But I mean, this whole thing, it started with the ham radio deal. Just the articles, got me a little bit fired up, and I really try to be one of the people that stays out of the drama. I mean, there's enough of it going on, and it's storm season. It's time to chase. It's time to spot. It's time to sell video. Sell tours, whatever you're doing. But the recurring theme in some of these stories and some of the comments on Facebook and Twitter from the general public and some of these reporters that have written the stories has kind of been, if you make money off of chasing at all, you're only in it for the fame and the glory, and you have no business making reports. And so, here I am, a guy who has run a company now for almost a decade that sells tornado video and streams. But what a lot of people don't know is that, I started this company to help the National Weather Service. I mean, I saw the destruction of Spencer, South Dakota in 1998 firsthand. And talking with people there, I learned that there was, I won't say no warning, but there was little warning. Because the siren didn't go off in time, and then the power went out, and there were a lot of DAOs and there were a lot of researchers around, but there weren't a ton of chasers on that day, and the ones that were either had a problem reporting because 911 didn't believe them, or they didn't know the NWS number, or there wasn't an organized spotter group in that county, and 6 people died that day. And it made me realize that there had to be a better way to do this. And I know, James is on board with this. He knows that the real-time video can be a lifesaver. And I believe that. And it just took a while for technology to come up with the idea of live streaming. I mean, I knew that, seeing a tornado at the NWS office or at the TV station was way better than a guy in front of some radar blobs jumping up and down yelling tornado warning. if you can see that it's heading toward your house, you're gonna, pay attention. And I've been doing audio streaming for years and years, started in radio, and it was about 5 years before we decided to take the first Logitech eyeball camera and duct tape it to the dashboard and use real video encoder.
Wow. You're dating yourself, Corey.
Tell me about it. And, we streamed about 1 frame every 2 seconds. But you know what? Jay Trobeck at Kello could see the gravel road and he could see the sky. And we had to put a pair of sunglasses in front of the camera because it couldn't iris down with the sun. But it worked. It worked. And, so more and more of these these anti-chaser articles are coming out, and it's some because the author has a personal vendetta against chasers, or they don't like what chasing has become, or they think all chasers have abandoned their moral obligations and have forgotten their reasons for being in the field. And I'm just sitting here going, deep down, most haven't forgotten. And so there's a million places we could go with this, but I'd kind of like to keep it to chaser myths versus reality, and then talk about reporting to the NWS.
I had in reading some of this stuff over the last week or so, something struck me. Number one, it makes sense, and we had to deal with this here in this part of the country briefly, that if you are in control if you're doing net control and you have spotters or chasers, either one, who are unknown to you calling in reports, what do you do with that, right? We had a tornado emergency, not just a warning, but a tornado emergency issued based in large part on a spotter report that was relayed to the Weather Service that turned out to be bogus. But when you're in the heat of battle, when you've got a moderate risk out in this part of the world, what do you do with that? Somebody calls in, you don't know that person. So in one sense, I think there's been some unfair criticism of the spotter group and the ham group in Wichita Falls operating a closed or semi-closed net. And, again, the amateur frequencies are open for anybody to report an emergency. You can all traffic stops if you declare an emergency. Am I wrong? I mean, I've got a ham license. I'm not as active as some folks here, but
I think the deal,
you see a tornado on the ground, you can interrupt anything you want.
Right. That's the way I believe it should be. But when you declare a RACES net operational, this is Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. That's a government thing. And unless you've got a RACES, help me on this, Brian, a permit or some type of special, you got to have your RACES card. If you don't, they can say you can't be on this net, which was very odd to me because they had that in Dallas, and I've never experienced that. Everything where I was ARES, which is wide open. And I agree with Nate. If I'm driving, if I just happen to be driving through Wichita Falls and I see a wall cloud or a tornado, I need to tell somebody that. Now, this is a different era. Maybe I can pick up my phone and call the Weather Service, but at the same time, it's a lot easier to do it via ham radio.
Well, a lot of cases
say, well, we're closed and the RACES and you can't get on here. I do have a little problem with that.
Now, my understanding was that what was going on in Wichita Falls was an ARES, not a RACES.
Okay, well, that's a whole different situation. That should be wide open.
And
it
so
was ARES.
So in theory, yes, they can quote unquote close it and prefer or favor traffic for people who are known to the net control folks. But I know from talking with our folks around here, they are more comfortable with information from people that are known to them. And if you've got a sufficient amount of traffic on a particular day, I would rather, it makes sense to try and prioritize traffic from known entities than from unknown entities. Now, that's not to say that this fella, Daniel, or what his name is, chasing, he may be, and I don't know, he may be world famous. He may be, the next Greg Forbes of storm chasing, even though he's not a chaser. But, that doesn't necessarily mean that net control operator in Wichita Falls is going to know who this person is or know him or her from Adam. So the resume just doesn't automatically translate.
Hold on.
I want to make one other point. I think there's a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for here? I think there are folks out looking for a fight. We have this fight every year. it's someplace else, either Wichita Falls or South Dakota or Norman and Oklahoma City or Dallas. We have some flavor of this fight, and the folks on the forums were talking about, okay, here's this fight again. It's starting up a little earlier this year, but here we go up on Storm Track. And if you're looking for a fight, you're gonna find one. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't a legitimate beef here, that this guy wasn't slighted, that he didn't have something to offer, but I do think that there may be a little oversensitivity on a number of fronts here, that we could all do well to step back and realize we're all on the same team, and there may have been at the end of the day, I think this boils down to a misunderstanding that just happened to land in a very sensitive spot that we were looking to scratch, and here we are scratching it.
Yeah, and the last thing we want to do is have any sort of witch hunt against Weather Service people. I'm not going to attack.
Especially not Rick Smith, who is
right.
As good, and again, he doesn't need me to defend him. But if I'm in the storm chasing community, I want somebody like Rick Smith on my side, because he gets us. He gets what we're about, and he knows the value of what storm chasers bring to the table.
Well, let me since you brought up the word value, I mean my chats and everything are exploding here, and one of the people that are talking right now are saying they feel like this is a recurring theme in the chaser community, that at least people that I deal with, is that it feels like chasers are valued less than spotters, and that their reports are valued less than spotters. And I'm asking Rick if that's the case, because that's the recurring theme in the chaser community, before these articles, after these articles, whatever.
I can answer for myself and in part for our office only. This does not necessarily reflect the views of 121 other WCMs and weather forecast offices. As I sit here in my house off the clock from my weather service, I always have to throw stuff like that in there. Just so that's on the record.
Caveats are us.
That's right. It's small print on the bottom. During severe weather, I will take just about any information I can get in some cases. There are chasers that are out there. When I see their name pop up in Spotter Network on NWS Chat, and I see that this person is on this storm, I'm like, thank goodness he's on this storm, because that is, I trust them. I know them. They have a good history of reports. They have a good reputation. Does that mean they're going to be perfect every single time? No, nobody's perfect every single time. There are spotters out there that are like that. Everybody has good days. Everybody has bad days. I want all the information I can get, and let us kind of sort it out. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with filtering that goes on at the local level, but I cannot sit here and say we like chaser reports better than spotter reports, or spotter reports better than chaser reports, because you cannot put all those people, generalize all those people, because there is a huge overlap, a huge gray area in that spotter chaser. There are a lot of storm chasers, including storm chasers who have businesses, who make money. There are storm chasers who work for local Oklahoma City TV stations, videographers for Oklahoma City stations. There are a lot of people who are hardcore chasers, pure chasers, that are also spotters, that are giving us good real-time information, helping a warning forecaster make critical seconds, on the scale of seconds, decisions about tornado warning, no tornado warning. So I rambled. I don't know if I answered that question, Corey, but it's...
I think you did. I think you did, but it just, and this is to the, I guess, semi-casual observer, that it seems like every big event, and again, it seems like, it might not be that it is, but it seems like there's an incident where, a chaser's report isn't believed, or the report isn't put into an LSR, or a warning isn't upgraded to a TOR-R until you've got 15 SpotterNet icons reporting it, or the chaser's been streaming it live for 5 minutes. Now, to be fair, we've talked about the Amarillo situation with Dick McGowan. I put a report on Twitter from one of my chasers just last week, and Amarillo took it with smiles and thank you. So it's who's in the chair and who's behind the mic and who's typing on the keyboard. But it just seems like the NWS maybe is starting to turn away from chaser reports, and I'm just wondering if that's a
Well,
complex that we all have, or
and
if
I think
there's something to it.
it's only it comes back to my point. It's only human. It's human nature to trust information from people who are known to you. The more you know them, the closer they are to you, the more you deal with them. Rick sees the value. A large number of the spotters in the Norman Weather Service office area, including Wichita Falls, on an annual basis. He hears them on and on again when he's listening to the spotter networks. Folks who are transient chasers that come through town, they may, quite frankly, have better information. Let's just put that out. In some cases, they may have better information because they're willing or able to go where spotters typically will not go, because the spotters, by design, are stationary. That's fine. But at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to take a report from somebody you know and you deal with on a regular basis than it is. You're going to automatically prioritize their information. Is that right? I can't say. But I think we're trying to assign blame and trying to pin folks into a corner to say you're not valuing as an intentional slight, when in reality we're bumping up against human nature.
It is human nature, and I wish, and Corey, I don't know if you know where it is or what happened to it, but you were at ChaserCon when I did a presentation there in January about this exact topic. How can chasers be more valuable to the Weather Service? How can the Weather Service be more valuable to chasers? How can we improve this? I can't. It's not online anywhere that I could find it. I wish it was.
It's been privatized. I could probably pull your chunk out if you allow me. I'll repost it somewhere. But
okay, well, yeah, that might be good because I think it explains a lot. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is everything that's going on in a Weather Service office during a severe weather event. We are getting information from now a ridiculous number of sources. And we never, I don't want to say never, you never say never in weather, but very rarely do we make a warning decision based on one sole piece of information. So maybe a chaser reports a rotating wall cloud, but maybe radar or some other data that we have there in the office indicates, well, let's wait a minute before we do anything with that. It's not that we're not using the information, it's that, just because you don't see a warning come out 30 seconds after you send a report in, or just because you don't see an LSR come out with your report, or just because you look at the SPC rough log or the next day and don't see an icon for your report, does not mean that report was not valuable and was not used. We use every piece of information that comes in, including, by the way, a relatively new phenomenon, or it's not new, but it's renewed. We're getting lots of fake reports, just obviously maliciously bogus reports that are coming into the office from people that are on the East Coast that are watching radar scope. They see a warning pop up in Southwest Oklahoma, and they say, oh, cool, I'm going to go on the Weather Service website and submit a fake report. We've got to sift through that. These are realistic reports. We've got to go and look at the IP address. There's a lot of crap that we have to go through, to excuse my language, but there's a lot going on, and I'm not whining saying poor pitiful us. I'm just saying we use every nugget of information that we get, whether you see a warning come out as a result of it or not. And I can never say, well, and even what Nate said, I get that. I mean, we do place value in someone we know. If there's somebody from our office, if one of our forecasters is out there chasing, or somebody that works at the Severe Storms Lab. Gabe Garfield is the name that comes to mind. If he's out there chasing, he works in our office. Pretty much, there's little hesitation to believe what he's saying. But that doesn't mean that we're looking at that, but we're looking at other things too. And one of the things I've seen a lot in the chaser forums and things like that is, how can you value a spotter report over a chaser report when chasers see so many more storms and are out there so much more? And that's a valid point in some cases. I'm not saying we discount every spotter report because they're not a chaser, but chasers invest a lot of money and a lot of time to do this. Daniel Shaw is over here for 3 months from Australia, for goodness sakes. I mean, that's not just walking out the back door and looking to see a cloud. I mean, that's megabucks. So there's an investment there, and they do have a lot more experience than some chasers. We do than some spotters. See, I'm getting it all mixed up. I mean, we do spotter training, and quite honestly, there's somebody in the back of the room snoring. Somebody made them come to a storm spotter class, and maybe they're a volunteer or whatever somewhere, not really interested in it. Would I rather have a report from that person who could not care less about severe weather, or from a Daniel Shaw or someone that works for Corey or someone like that who is passionate and energetic about the storms? It's really, it's not as simple as spotter versus chaser.
You're going to get all the spotters mad at you now, saying they were asleep, and
I know that. And it was
Corey,
halfway out of my mouth, and I'm like, okay, how do
Corey, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, again, we're all on the same team. I think this, as somebody in the media, I'm sort of Rick. I like getting lots of reports, and getting more information is better than less information, especially if it's quality information. And false reports aside, that's a thing we're all going to have to deal with until the end of time. Let's move past this event. What would storm chasers, people who are actively looking for storms, as opposed to spotters who are deployed in a particular area, sort of under the command of someone else, what would storm chasers want from the Weather Service and from the rest of the weather enterprise to feel like their reports are valued? I mean, you've heard what Rick said, that just because we don't issue a warning within 30 seconds of getting a report doesn't mean that data was lost to the void or that it doesn't have value. It just means that we're taking it into consideration with there may be conflicting information. There may be somebody else who says they're in the same spot not seeing the same thing, that kind of stuff. What would it take to make the storm chasing community feel like their reports are valued? Because I take Rick at his word when he says they are.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, I think there's a disconnect here that I think may be less intentional and more of a just let's sort of see it from the same angle.
And let me tell you the I know we're trying to get away from this specific event, but let me tell you the trigger that kind of fired up everybody. And I think what it was that most chasers told me, hey, he could have said, instead of we don't like storm chasing or we don't condone it, that he could have said in the article, again, you can say everything, it doesn't get published, but some chasers' reports are helpful, right? That's what Rick just got done saying. So I love that he said that. I'm trying to tweet out some of his quotes right now because I know people are following along with this whole thing. But I guess a lot of chasers took that as the outright condemning of chasing. And let me bring in a different example.
I'm going to say what Rick can't say.
Mm-hmm.
The Weather Service can't condone anything. And that's their line. And while he may have been able to phrase it a little bit more sensitively, at the end of the day, in the way the article and the article was, in my opinion, probably not the best written. Certainly didn't help. And the way
we'll talk about the article in a minute.
But the way that was framed, Rick's sort of in a corner. He can't say, we love storm chaser reports, because some people in places that rhyme with Washington, District of Columbia, may think that he's endorsing. Sometimes that's how things are taken. So he's got to be very careful. And so I think we have to sort of step back and say, I'm going to take what you say and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, as opposed to looking for every reason to think that you're out to get me. Now, and I want to get past that. What do we need? What needs the Weather Service? What do they need to do to make to include the chaser community and to make them feel as included as I think most Weather Service offices consider them to be?
I think a lot of what Rick just said a few minutes ago will go a long way. I think I'll go back and tweet even more quotes when I watch the archive of this. But I think a lot of what he said will help. It's probably not going to appease everybody. There's still people that are going to think that spotters are better than chasers in the minds of the NWS, and Rick can only speak for himself personally and his office. So there may be stuff going on in other markets. I want to bring up one of those just because and I have a question for Rick, and I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff, and then I'll let him answer it. But was there a mandate or something recently mentioned at, in an email or NWS training or something that moved us from not condoning, which I've heard that I went to my first spotter training in '99, and I heard, we don't condone storm chasing, we don't want you to do it. Fine, but he, at the same time, the trainer recognized that it happens. And I'm just wondering if something moved us from the not condoning to the outright condemning of it. And I'll give you an example of an incident that happened just in the last couple of weeks in the Midwest here. I'm not going to say where or who, because honestly, I've got friends on both sides of the deal, and they can go public with it if they want to. But in an NWS spotter training class, and I don't expect Rick to defend or comment on this part, but the trainer there said, because the class was being streamed live to Facebook, that chaser traffic killed Tim Samaras and his crew. And that is another part that kind of played into everything that's happened for the last couple of weeks here, at least in my mind, and anybody else that may have been watching that live feed. And if you watch Skip Talbot's dissection of the El Reno event on YouTube, it's simply not true. It's not true. The only other chaser that was on that gravel road in front of the Samaras crew was Dan Robinson, and he also happens to be leading a charge to get some of these reporters to do actual research, look at actual video, do some investigating, and interview both sides before writing these negative chaser articles. The other comments that were made by the trainer, though, were very similar to the same vein of Rick's comments in the Wichita Falls newspaper. So is that the mandated stance in the public for the NWS to distance itself from the El Reno event to decrease liability? And I don't know how much of that Rick can talk about, but that seems to be like we've moved beyond not condoning to more just distance.
Well, there's nothing at a systematic edict or anything that's come out. There's nothing from Weather Service headquarters or our regional headquarters that says, hey, work this into your spotter training. We need to, we're changing the tact. There's nothing like that. Most spotter training materials and presentations are developed by an individual within the office. So I can't speak to that directly. But this does speak to one of the problems, and it's the same thing we've been talking about and around throughout the evening, is lumping everyone together. And what happens is people hear, oh, there were chasers killed in the El Reno tornado. People that weren't here and didn't live it may not get all the details. People only, it's just like with everything else, you only hear about the bad. You don't hear enough about the good chasers, the chasers that are making positive contributions, that are contributing video and contributing reports on a very frequent basis. You don't hear enough about that. So people that are on the edges and other offices maybe only hear that chasers are bad, and that's because there are a small, and I think it's a small handful, and there are and there's. This is not a knock on chasers, but it's true. I mean, there's a small group out there that just are probably not who chasers want representing them in the public eye, with some of their social media tactics, with some of their driving behavior. Again, a small number. I'm not painting everybody with a brush. I'm saying that's a fact. And sometimes it's not good, but sometimes everybody gets painted with the same brush with the chasing thing. So that's a long rambling answer, but no, there's nothing that has said, yeah, we need to start hitting it harder, that chasing's not only not condoned, but it's reckless or irresponsible or whatever they say.
But Rick, having been a WCM for a number of years in the Birmingham area, and supporting it as the regional WCM from Fort Worth, Texas, there's never been any kind of official policy to condone or promote either way. We're looking for reports, is what the National Weather Service is looking for. Good, reliable, and that's why you provide the training.
Right.
You don't want people reporting things that aren't there, or they're being misled by. So it's always been that way, I think.
And going back real quick, chasers don't get enough credit. One of the slides I showed in my ChaserCon presentation was how small the piece of the pie is, the percentage of all the report sources, where reports come from across the Southern Plains. Mark Fox, my counterpart in Fort Worth, ran some numbers, and storm chasers only made up like 2-point-something%. There's no way that that number is that low. It is much higher than that. But what happens in a Weather Service office is, and it happens in my office, and I'm trying to fix it, is a report comes in, and the default, if it's a ham radio person or somebody that's out looking at the storm, the default for putting that into the computer system is Train Spotter. I am working hard to, if it's a storm chaser that makes the report, put storm chaser in the LSR. I mean, we've got to start highlighting the positive more and to overcome some of the negative.
The fact of the matter is that many storm chasers are trained spotters.
Exactly.
You know, they've gone out. I mean, you know, one of the main things that I do every time a person comes to me and says, you know, how do I become a chaser? The first thing I tell somebody is to take NWS spotter training. Take some training. Learn what you're looking at before you grab your camera and your Camaro and go driving 90 miles an hour after a storm. You know,
do people chase in Camaros? That seemed like a terrible idea.
There was an incident, let's just say.
An incident.
Yeah, there was another incident. But I mean, many chasers start out as spotters. I mean, I did, and then they decide to go, you know, mobile spotting, and then, you know, they move up and they get more experience, and, you know, one day they call you old or a veteran or whatever, and you know, that's just what happens. But, you know, one of the key words that Rick, you know, and again, I'm not jumping on Rick, but he said the word reckless, and that would be another hotly contested term that's out there, and you know, it's between many different groups. There's many different opinions, but, you know, a lot of the comments that I see boil down to, like, you know, 3 areas, and one of them is that, you know, chasers are getting too close. They're being reckless, but as long as it's legal, it's going to happen. And you know, don't get me started on, you know, laws and chaser police and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, chasers have been trying to one up each other for video for years. You know, get better, get closer, get, you know, whatever. But here's one thing: the chaser traffic really thins out when you're within a mile of a tornado. You know, the number of vehicles really goes, you know, downhill when you're that close. And, you know, those that get that close usually have some sort of special vehicle, but not always. You know, I mean, Tim was one who, you know, had a truck, and it wasn't really armor plated or anything. And I remember Campo Tornado, Andy Gabrielson and Tim Samaras basically neck and neck racing to see who could stick their front bumper in the tornado. And that was their style of chasing. And you could ask 50 people, you get 50 different answers as to what safe chasing is. Some people say chasing isn't safe at all.
But what you just said is definitely a characteristic of recklessness.
What's that?
When 2 storm chasers are bumper to bumper and heading for the storm to see how close they can get, I think that just immediately raises a bad flag for most everybody, because, you know, we're trying to save lives from severe weather. We're not trying to get people killed. And
Sure.
Doing that kind of action, I think in most people's vocabulary, that's reckless.
That's right, because most people are not storm chasers. You know,
Yes. But by the same token, we still don't want anybody to get killed.
Sure,
and when you're just trying to just beat the other guy to get closer, and I'm just like Rick. I mean, I love having the videos that are close, where you can get some of the details and show people you're training to be storm spotters what it looks like, because that's their only chance to see it until they really see it. So, you know, but that kind of action is the kind of things, and you mentioned something else that's reckless, and that is they're traveling at 90 miles an hour to get to a storm. Well, excuse me, but if you're not obeying the speed limits, you are being, by definition, reckless.
And of course, when I talk about 90 miles an hour, I mean the you know, people that I mean, we've all sped. Every chaser has sped. If you say you didn't, you're lying.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, absolutely.
You know, but you know, when I say 90 miles an hour in a Camaro with your mom's camcorder, I mean, you know, it's the people that are doing it for the first, second, maybe third time in their life, and they have no idea what they're doing. You know, I mean, I think everybody understands that El Reno was a horrible, horrible event. But if you compare that to the other example that I just gave, which was the Campo tornado, it was going over a field of grass for like 30 minutes. There was no debris in it, and you had two people that God's honest truth, I believe, just absolutely love tornadoes and severe weather, and unfortunately neither of them are with us anymore, and it's sad that both of them were in that video. The point I was trying to make was that neither of them had an armored vehicle, and so no matter who's out there doing things, there's going to be somebody who's upset about it or doesn't like it or whatever. I mean, El Reno was horrible, but I don't even think we've scratched the surface on what we can learn from that tornado. I mean, there were so many chaser icons inside that 2.6 mile wide or whatever it was circulation that, I mean, I believe there's video out there showing bad things happening to chasers that hasn't even been released yet and probably never will be released. And I hope it doesn't, because it's going to continue to you know, reinforce some of these stereotypes that a few people have, which is, you know, get really close and be reckless in some people's, you know, minds. I mean, I drove into a tornado. You know, it was on accident. We discussed it here on WeatherBrains. But if you don't think that didn't change my chasing style, I mean, you got to think you got another thing coming. I mean, my friend John Davies, most of you know him, did a little visit of the tornado path in relationship to my vehicle, and he basically said that if I'd been another 30 or 40 yards down the road, I would have been in the core flow, and that tornado would have blown me out in the field. And you know, but that didn't stop me from selling the video either, which is another whole subject that we'll get to. But you know, honestly, God's honest truth, it launched my company. I mean, the money that was made off of that video allowed me to put an investment into making Severe Studios a full company. But I believe still that the job that we do, you know, the streams and helping the Weather Service, and you know, every chaser talk that's given by the National Weather Service has Severe Studios video in it. And I think that was maybe another one of the little things, is if you have anybody giving a talk out there that's bashing chasers and you have chaser video behind you on the projector, you know, that just seems a little hypocritical. But I mean, I don't think that chasing with the intent to profit is bad because you aren't doing it, you know, first for public safety. I mean, public safety has to come in a close second, because you know, nobody has ever told me they want to get into storm chasing because of the boatloads of cash or the babes that line up, you know, outside to flock to you. And you know, I think most chasers that are out there that calls in reports do it with valid reports, with responsible reports, and there's a ton of them that will miss footage or mess up their shot by putting the camera down to put their fingers on the keyboard and type spotter net or pick up the phone and call it in, or ham radio or whatever. And I think that's the key to this whole thing, is that there's a few bad apples, but the majority, we want them to know that we genuinely care about the citizens that are out there. So even if my front bumper is in the tornado, if that tornado is heading toward a populated area, we're going to call it in.
A couple of things as I'm listening to this. Number one, you know, Rick mentioned, you know, he mentioned reckless, and he said there are a few bad apples. You mentioned that, and the bad apples spoil the bunch. And the reason for that is, you know, that's an easy trope. It's an easy story that people they assume that chasers are reckless until proven otherwise. That's not true. No. I believe factually that is not true, but it's the story that's out there. It's sort of like it struck without warning. It's there, it's easy. That doesn't make it right, because we know it's wrong, but that's sort of what we're up against. It's easy for people to sort of fall back on that. And so in some ways, it's almost like you have to be better than the average to try and weigh the average up in the direction where it, you know, toward where it actually is, that perception. Because perception, the concept of reckless, is, you know, there's probably a legal definition of it, I'm sure. There's also the public perception, and it's going to be a socially constructed thing. You know, Samaras and I forget the other fellow's name, driving toward the tornado, that may not have been reckless for them, given the amount of equipment they have, given the training, the experience they have, things that experienced people do. It would be very reckless for me as a student pilot to do certain things. It would be very reckless for me to intentionally spin an airplane. For somebody who's got 3,000 hours and does aerobatics, that's not reckless. But for somebody outside who doesn't know me from the other guy, it just looks reckless. It looks dangerous. So I think that's something that we're fighting here, is that public perception that chasers get a bad rap. But I like Rick's idea of being able to say a storm chaser submitted this or a trained spotter, because they're two different groups. Mm-hmm. And even a trained chaser might even be where you want to go with that, because there are probably untrained chasers helping to give that bad perception.
Yeah, and I mean, and who sets the classifications, right? I mean, you've got, I think, two different columns. You've got the green chasers, like you talked about, in the chaser community we call them the noobs. They're the newbies. They're the people that have been out there a year or less. But there's two other groups involved with this recently, and that's the locals. People that the sirens go off and they hit the roads and they live in that town or that community. And then you also have the chasers, the people that see us roll into town with antennas and stickers and wraps on our cars and all sorts of equipment, and they just follow us along. I mean, I remember one time in South Dakota, Manchester tornado, we had like 10 or 12 cars behind us because the first one leading the bunch was the TV station vehicle. And, those people, I think, are contributing to most, all of the problem that seems to be coming up in more and more of these articles. But I mean, who really determines when someone moves from noob to experienced and then to veteran? Who determines that something is reckless? Most chasers that I talk to have already given up on public perception, as sad as that may sound, but it's the honest truth. Everybody we talk to thinks chasers are crazy anyway. And there's really not a whole lot we can do to change that. But when we are talking with something like the National Weather Service or somebody that's in the know, we kind of feel, I guess, we expect them to realize that our reports can be just as good as someone who is just staying stationary or is staying 15 miles away or whatever.
What role, if any, should and could Spotter Network play in this? I mean,
Spotter Network's a huge part.
Huge. So could that play, because the Weather Service has relationships with other organizations? Is this an organization where a more formal relationship could be developed to sort of help sort the wheat from the chaff in terms of reports and who's trained and who's not?
Well, there is a formal relationship between the Weather Service and Spotter Network. There is there's a signed memorandum. I don't know what the term is, but there is a formal, recognized at the headquarters level relationship between the Spotter Network and the Weather Service. And I promote Spotter Network at every single Storm Spotter talk I do. I love Spotter Network. I think it's awesome, and that does help. It takes care of a lot of the issues that we've been talking about for the last hour or so. What do you think, Corey?
Let me ask you guys this. How did we get to this point where everybody's feelings are hurt and everybody wants to fight? It's like we're in the second grade classroom here. I don't understand that. I mean, this is weather. It's not, it shouldn't be this way. And I think everybody needs to understand there are jabronis in every segment represented here.
Including broadcast meteorology. You got three of them on the show.
That's the first thing I'm going to say.
Here, yeah.
We got some jabronis in the TV weather business. Some foul balls that don't need to be in it, and they give us a bad name. Some of these chaser guys are just buffoons. They give everybody else a bad name. You got some people in the Weather Service that give everybody else a bad name. So we just have to recognize that and realize that most everybody has the right heart. They're trying to do the right thing. Why are we all so mad and our feelings are hurt and we're trying to fight with each other? This is not working.
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the just like any other group of people, I mean, we have internal fights going on inside the chaser community all the time, and I honestly don't know how much people really realize that. I'm sure everybody on this panel does, but I mean, to take it one step further, we even pitched a show to National Geographic that was just basically all about the drama of chasing. And thank God nobody picked it up. But it would have been an interesting, would have been an interesting show to see. It was gonna revolve around the different people who do make money in the business and what that competition is like. But I don't know. I just feel like the people that talked to me felt slighted somehow. But I think this entire conversation has helped it. Rick's comments have helped it. In my opinion, I can't speak for everybody, and even though I'm trying to do that tonight, I'm still, one dude running a company.
We could also do a National Geographic show on the drama in a weather service office, and the drama in a TV station weather department, and the drama among amateur radio operators. There's none of us are. I mean, one thing I always say when I'm talking to people about this is this job. Whether you're a chaser, a spotter, an observer, a hybrid of any of those three terms combined, mashed together, a TV meteorologist, any kind of person dealing with weather, this job is hard enough as it is. When we're all holding hands and smiling and singing, it's hard enough. It's just harder when this is going on. Hopefully some of this discussion is helping things. I know there's a lot of work to do, but I can tell you, me personally, I'm open to any ideas or any suggestions of what we can do as an integrated warning team, and I include chasers as a member of that team. What can we do, to move forward?
See, Rick's comments are. Go ahead.
Go, Kevin. Go.
No, Rick's comments are exactly why I was confused by this as well. Rick is one of the best in the business. He's the best in the business at what he does, and he's, number one, entitled to his opinion. He doesn't make snap judgments.
No, he's a government employee. He's not entitled to his opinion.
Well, but he is entitled to his opinion, even if it comes through this, and he doesn't make snap judgments, and he was giving opinion. Now, somebody fanned this at the paper. Yeah, maybe, who knows, but James's comment is right. Why is everybody... I came into this a little late, and I read that article because somebody sent it to me, and I went, okay, so what's the problem here? And then you see people getting their feelings hurt, and that's what I didn't understand. There is clearly some raw nerve, which I guess Corey has alluded to, that people are feeling badly somehow about this. But at the same time, Rick's comments, James' comments are right. We're all on the same team here. Why don't we all just kind of get along and calm down and man up and just relax and work together instead of going around trying to flame people on Twitter or whatever it is. Just calm down.
And I think the reason it kind of blew up this week was because you have an outside influence that's supposed to be impartial, it's supposed to have journalistic integrity, that's supposed to check both sides of a story, that came out with this series of 3 articles now that basically have just said the same thing over and over again, and only backed up by people who already felt the same way as the newspaper reporter. Well, and I think whatever. I mean, that's my take on it, right? But
my take on the first one. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that's what I feel is that somebody that's supposed to be kind of impartial, I guess, then went back and only cherry picked the comments that supported his side of things from Rick, and that was really. I mean, there were 2 unfair things. There were how his comments were used in the article, and then there was the chaser reaction to said comments.
But you know what the reality of that is? The first article was, look, here's something that happened. Now, the thing that set it off, from my view, is that some people took offense and went crazy. Well, what that means is then all of a sudden somebody at the newspaper says, wait a second, what's going on here? We're getting this spike in traffic, and that just fans the flames. The way to combat this stuff is to not start blowing on those flames as well. It was not an unfair article. Was it a little one way or another? Oh, who knows, but it was not a big deal in my opinion. it became a big deal when people got worked up about it, and then that fans the flames to say, okay, here's a fire from the newspaper side, here's a fire, let's go pour some gasoline on it because we need more clicks. And this is the same thing I've said on a number of issues, like the shaming of women on television, and there was a round of people going after gals that were pregnant on TV. The way that we stop this is to not focus on them, not give these trolls and these crazies the attention that they're looking for.
So here's my we got to stop and do some recorded segments because it's really long here. But here it's like there's so many people in the weather enterprise, so many people across the weather service and television, the chasers. You couldn't drive a 10-penny nail up their backside with a sledgehammer. We're going to have to loosen up. There's no crying in baseball, and there's no hurt feelings in weather. There's no hurt feeling. You shouldn't have any feelings left if you've been doing this for a long time. There are fools in every segment represented here. There are absolute fools, and you've got to parse them out. They're outliers. There's nothing you can do about it, and focus on the fact that most of us have the same goals, the same objectives. We ought to be getting along. We shouldn't be having these stinking hurt feelings and everybody getting offended. This is nuts. It's like the world we live in. Having said that, we do have to stop, ladies and gentlemen. We got to play Professor Peters. We've got Tony Rice. And we will come back with the Weather Roundup, Picks of the Week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
Over the weekend, a pioneer in the study of hurricanes passed away. William Mason Gray, known by most as Bill, died on April the 16th at the age of 86. Dr. Gray remained an active participant in hurricane and climate change research until the time of his death. He is best known for his seasonal forecast of tropical systems in the Atlantic Basin. During his career, he published more than 80 papers and 60 research reports. Dr. Gray was born in Detroit, Michigan on October the 9th, 1929. He was the eldest son, and the family moved to Washington, D.C. in 1939. He graduated with a B.S. degree in geography from the George Washington University in 1952 and was heavily involved in high school football and baseball. However, a promising career in baseball was cut short with a knee injury at the age of 21. While that door was closing, another was opening in the form of the U.S. Air Force. Dr. Gray joined in 1953 and spent a year studying meteorology at the University of Chicago, then one of the nation's leading schools for atmospheric science. After several years as an Air Force forecaster, mainly in England and the Azores, he returned to the University of Chicago, where he earned an MS in meteorology in 1959 and a PhD in geophysical sciences in 1964, under the mentorship of Herbert Reel, another pioneer in the field of meteorology. He was recruited by and joined the newly formed Department of Atmospheric Science at Colorado State University in 1961. Dr. Gray was a faculty member at Colorado State University from 1961 through his formal retirement in 2005. But after retirement, he continued hurricane and climate research as a professor emeritus until his death. Dr. Gray initiated seasonal hurricane forecasts, for which he became well known with extensive media coverage in the 1980s and 90s. Dr. Gray graduated 70 master's and PhD students, and many of his ex-graduate students have become prominent leaders in the field of tropical meteorology today. His last graduate student, Philip Klotzbach, has continued Dr. Gray's work on seasonal forecasts since 2006. His work was truly global, with many years with the UN's World Meteorological Organization. He initiated and organized the first WMO International Workshop on Tropical Cyclones in Bangkok in 1985. He traveled the world and maintained collaborations with prominent researchers in the field of tropical meteorology throughout his career. To recognize his leadership and distinguished service in the field of tropical meteorology, Dr. Gray received many professional awards, including the first ever Robert and Joanne Simpson Award in 2014. If you have a question about the weather, you can drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
This week, look to the west after sunset for a rare sight, the planet Mercury. Mercury reaches the point of greatest elongation. That's the angle between the Sun, Earth, and the planet today, April 18th. Normally, Mercury is pretty difficult to see. It spends most of its time in the glare of the Sun. But about every 3 months, first in the morning, and then 3 months later in the evening, the planet reaches the point in its orbit where it's most separated from the Sun, from our vantage point here on Earth. Throughout this week, but especially early in the week, look to the west after sunset. Mercury will be about 20 degrees above the horizon, shining at magnitude 0.4. That's a little bit brighter than Saturn, but dimmer than Vega. As the Sun continues to sink lower, the sky will darken, and the planet will be even easier to see until it sets about 90 minutes later. That first rock from the Sun will be on our minds again in a few weeks. Mark your calendars for May 9th, 2016. Mercury is going to pass between Earth and the Sun, or transit the Sun. Much of the central and all of the eastern time zones will be able to see the entire transit beginning to end. Those of you in the Pacific and Mountain time zones, you'll see the transit, but it'll be in progress as of sunrise. Mercury will appear as a small dot moving across the face of the Sun, beginning about 7:12 a.m. Eastern. Over the next 16.5 hours, the planet will continue sliding across the face of the Sun, exiting the southwestern edge. Now, like any other eclipse or other observation of the Sun, you'll need a telescope with a solar filter to safely view the event. Check with your local astronomy club, which may already be planning a public observation session, or visit nightsky.jpl.nasa.gov to find a club that is actively involved in this kind of public outreach near you. It's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
By the way, we can carry on this conversation well past the regular show end here, so we can just keep on going all night. But some of us have to do some television. And Aubrey, you've been very quiet through all of this. Are you okay?
I am good. I am good. You know, still recovering from the weekend. Just kidding. No, we are. Yeah, sorry. I've been busy doing weather. Still trying to catch up on everything after being off for a few days, and it's you know it's tough because we don't. I mean, I know there are chasers in Virginia. Obviously, it's much harder to chase out in the East Coast, but we don't have exactly the same kind of activity as you guys do.
And again, we're going to, since you've been gone and you're just catching up, we're going to do a quadruple email segment next week. So we've got a pile of email, and we're going to get to that next week. But quickly, let's do a weather roundup. So it's rained a little bit in Texas, huh, Kevin? Not where you are, but
just a little.
Yeah, I put out a storm total precip image from a radar scope from Houston, and 10 to 12 inches on the west-northwest side of downtown. And if you've ever been to Houston, you know why that causes a problem. It's a big bayou, and there are a lot of low spots in there. So big flooding there this morning.
I saw 5 fatalities as a direct result of the flooding, so that was pretty nasty. And
yeah,
other than that,
I'll make another comment just because I'm remembering we had some video, or I saw some video earlier of a poor old guy who got caught in the floodwaters there, and the soundbite that I heard, he was talking to the camera or the reporter or somebody, and he said it was just a puddle. It just looked like a puddle. And there was some discussion about, well, gosh, the car is almost covered to its rooftop. Well, that was by the time the camera showed up. But it brings up 2 points. Number one, what you see on video, may be somewhat after the fact, but always the point about what the Weather Service brings up and has been using as a slogan for years: turn around, don't drown. You don't know what's going on underneath that water, to the ground or the road underneath it, and you don't know how quickly it's going to come up. So everybody here who's a weather geek needs to reinforce that as much as they can.
Yeah, no kidding. That was some really riveting footage we saw from there today. But other than that, things are quiet around the nation. It's funny, you got the one hot spot there in Texas with the flooding, but things are quiet. So we'll do picks of the week, and I got to let Nate finish because I have to go do some television here. Notice I changed clothes during the recording segments. It's a good thing we didn't have a wardrobe malfunction. Because with me, you really don't want that to happen. That is big time nasty. My pick of the week, it's a little piece on Medium about television meteorologists in the future. I just saw where a lot of TV Mets were getting discouraged, and I think everybody gets discouraged in any profession after a while, but it just seemed like a little too much negativity was creeping in, and I just wanted to share maybe some positive thoughts of the future. I do think there's a great future and a great hope if you're willing to work hard and do some other things. But anyway, we'll put a link to that essay up on weatherbrains.com. So, Nate, the floor, sir, belongs to you while I go do some television.
And I'm sorry you have to leave because I want to nitpick that piece you have on Medium, but we'll do that next week.
We'll do it next week.
So my pick of the week is a new app released just in the last couple of days by the folks at College of DuPage, the Next Lab, and they have released an iPhone app that allows you very easy access to a lot of the model data, including some of the soundings that are created by SharpEye up there. So really cool stuff up there. If you are mobile and you need your model fixed, that's a pretty good way to get it. Rick Smith, pick of the week from you, sir.
Well, my pick of the week, I had a lot to choose from, and I didn't know whether to do one on the topic we're talking about tonight, but I had to pick one that was really timely as far as the Houston flooding goes. I thought there was an interesting thing that floated up on Twitter today, no pun intended.
Whatever. You had totally intended that.
I can't believe that wasn't planned.
Well, it wasn't, I promise. You won't believe me. But there was a story that a photographer...
We don't condone punning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easy now. Easy now. We're almost done. This was last May when Houston had flooding, the Memorial Day flooding. There was a news photographer, a still photographer, that was traveling, and it's a really interesting story. Meteorologists are really quick to jump on people when they say, "You idiot, what are you doing driving into the water? Did you not know?" This article kind of gives you a little bit of insight into what people's decision making is and how people perceive risk, and I thought it was really well written and really well done and really compelling, and it kind of made me feel, what it would be like to be in that situation. Again, it's from last year, but it's in the Houston area, and I think it's pretty timely.
Cool. Thank you very much for sharing. Brian Peters, pick of the week, sir.
Yes, and by the way, Rick, I read that article. That is a rather compelling article as to how...
What do you think?
Yeah, how that person got into trouble, and I really can understand it. I'm also going to go with what's been going on at Houston. The Houston Chronicle has done a great job of compiling a number of photographs from viewers of the flooding that's going on all around Houston, and so that'll be my pick of the week.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Looks like Aubrey has checked out, at least for the moment. Nope,
I've got
there.
hers in case...
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but can't see you.
Oh, you can't see my screen share?
I can't see you.
Aw, man. All right, I was trying to screen share the image of from our Skycam. If you follow me on Twitter at WHSVOBS, you can see it. We actually have a wildfire that has grown to over 2,000 acres here in the Shenandoah National Park, and a lot of trails are closed. Part of the park is closed. A visible satellite from the National Weather Service in Sterling. They have a great image up there, so that is my pick of the week. Right now, the fire is okay, but keeping an eye on it tomorrow because we are dry and it's going to be windy.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Corey, a pick of the week from you, sir.
Yeah, I'm sure this has been a pick of the week previously, but it's a very, very long video on YouTube, but I think it's worth every single second of it, and that's Skip Talbot's dissection of the El Reno tornado. It's on YouTube. It's called Safety Lessons from El Reno, and I think anybody that has any questions about what actually happened, to the best of our knowledge, with the data that's available, should go watch that video, all 1 hour and 2 minutes of it, or whatever it is.
I heartily endorse that too. That's awesome stuff.
Skip's got some great stuff, and including some funny stuff. A few weeks ago, he posted the political candidates and their different statements, and Bernie Sanders, the picture of him, and it says the top 1% of tornadoes or storms produce 99% of the tornadoes. I can't not hear Bernie Sanders, or at least Larry David doing Bernie Sanders, in my head when I see that. So Corey, tell us how can folks get a hold of you? I think most folks who watch the program know who you are, but how can we get a hold of you on the internet? And thank you, by the way, for coming and sort of representing a community that we don't have a lot of contact with on the program, certainly as much as we like. given the importance. Tell us a little about how folks can get a hold of you and find you if they have any other questions.
Yeah, first I just want to, thank Rick for, putting up with all the craziness and for trying to answer the questions to the best of his ability. So I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
So you can get a hold of me on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way. It's at Corey Hartman. That's Corey with a K. Also on Twitter at Severe Studios, and similar things on Facebook, and of course our website severestudios.com, where you can watch live tornadoes.
Stand by.
Fantastic. And I think we're hearing Kevin's studio stuff, so we're
Counting us
getting
in.
Yes, getting a nice dose of Wichita Falls local news there.
Hey Nate, can I mention something real quick?
Please jump in.
I mentioned this earlier. I'm seeing stuff in the chat and on Twitter, and we were working to try to get Daniel Shaw to come on and somebody from the Wichita Falls spotter group to come on to kind of have a more direct discussion about some of this. We just couldn't make it happen. Daniel's out chasing, and couldn't really make that happen. But we'd really love to have Daniel on sometime. I think his story is fascinating, not because of all of this, but just because the logistics of living in Australia and coming here and chasing, and he's obviously somebody that loves weather and is passionate about it. So we'll get him on at some point, but we were looking at doing that tonight. So for the people that were wondering,
yeah, we had
they
a
knew
number
I
of...
was coming on, and they said, "Nah, we're we're out."
We had actually a number of conversations. We'd reached out to a number of folks over the course of the last week to try and get them on the program, and various things, the fact that there are folks chasing tonight and everything else. It's just the nature of the business. Sometimes we're not able to get the folks, the newsmakers, as it were, because they're out making news, as it were. So that's a good thing. All right, well, let's take a look at the calendar going ahead since Bill Murray is out. We've got really a full calendar. We're really about halfway, if not 2/3 of the way programmed through the summer. We're now taking reservations for the beginning of August. So if you have any suggestions for, actually, no, I take that back. Yeah, into the beginning of August, we got a couple of other ones in mid-August as well. So if you've got any suggestions for us, we'd certainly love to hear them. And let me get my computer to go back. It's now going to be silly and crazy. Let's go back. There we go. Next week, the 25th of April, Greg Carbon. We have 2 shows actually lined up for that day. I'm not really sure what's going on here. I've got Greg Carbon and I've got Jeff Medlin. We'll figure that out. Tom Nizzle from the Weather Channel, on May 2nd. Getting into quiet season for him, as he is their winter weather expert. Eric Berger from Ars Technica is going to be on to talk about the future forecasting on May the 9th. There's the Jeff Medlin show on May 16th. Jason Samenow from the Washington Post and Capital Weather Gang on the 31st. Some other notables in the next little while. Joe Whitty. I've got our Weather Association annual meeting update coming. Kevin Kleesel from OU. Coming in July, talking about the Virginia Tech Tornado Cube in August, or in July as well, and heading into August, we'll be talking about football lightning safety with Charlie Woodrum. So we got a lot of good stuff. If you've got a guest suggestion, shoot it to us via email. Let us know. Email at weatherbrains.com. We appreciate everybody, by the way, on Twitter. This has been an active conversation, not only here on the program, but also a lot of tweets as well, and we certainly appreciate everybody chiming in and commenting and having the conversation ongoing. And this is something that, as we mentioned earlier, it's an ongoing conversation. We need to make sure that everybody's work and contributions to the weather enterprise are valued and seen for what they are, and try and filter out the bad apples, because as James mentioned, we got bad apples in every corner of the weather enterprise. We need to look past that, and I think, quite frankly, just let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise, as opposed to the other way around. That's sometimes hard to do, but I think if we do that, things tend to work a little bit better. So anyway, this is WeatherBrains. It's the All About the Weather Netcast. We normally record it live via Google Hangout on Monday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. And let's see, that's 9:30 Eastern plus 7 in Estonia, so that puts us somewhere early in the morning. Tarmo got a hold of me on Twitter this morning, or this evening. So I think that's 4:30 a.m. Eastern or Estonian time. So hopefully Tarmo's not up watching this live. He'll get the podcast version later on in Tuesday. So anyway, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, shoot them to us. Email at weatherbrains.com. You can find past shows on weatherbrains.com. All our social media information is there. You can come harass us there. We'd certainly love to talk to you there. Corey Hartman, Severe Studios, thanks for being on the program tonight. We appreciate you jumping in the line of fire. We appreciate that. Until next week, I am not James Spann. Good night, and God bless.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. We appreciate you being on, and you speak eloquently for, I think, a segment of our sort of population, I guess, that we don't hear from very often.
And you probably only got through half of your notes.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I got through everything except for
this one radioactive thing that I was going to blow it up.
Yeah. Well, it was the chasers impeding emergency services.
Yes.
Yeah, I really kind of wanted to get to that, but hey, I've never seen a chaser not move out of the way for flashing lights. That's the Cliff's Notes version of that deal. So.
We have enough people that don't know. I was driving on a 4-lane road with a turn lane in the middle, and I had
they don't
fire
know what
trucks.
That's for.
Yes, and there were fire trucks coming in the opposite direction. I pull over to the far right, even though I'm not anywhere close to them. There were people in the inner lane going the other direction who stopped and and didn't know whether they needed to pull over to the right or pull. So they just stopped in the middle of their lane. So the ambulance and the fire truck are having to cruise down, weaving in and out of traffic through the turn lane in the middle of the road. And I'm thinking, that was like the second thing I learned after, the pedal on the right is gas and the one on the left is brake. The next thing was if you hear sirens or see flashing lights, you pull over as far to the right as you can get and give them a wide berth. But, whatever. Anyway, Corey, thanks for being on. We appreciate you tonight.
And sometimes you can't pull to the right, so you do have some other choices there, too.
You have to pull over as far to the right as you can go. Yeah. I think is the way that it was always described to me. And if there's somebody to your right, then you're as far right as you can go, and that's that. But that wasn't their problem. They stopped in the middle of their lane. There was no one in the lane to their right. So anyway, I just work here.
Me too. I can't speak for every chaser out there. You should see my desktop. That's just chat window after chat window. But, I'm the great uniter. I don't know something.
It's all good.
Well, Corey, let's keep the conversation seriously.
Yes.
This is not just fluff for a podcast. I'm serious. We have to we have to keep the conversation, whether we have a grand summit somewhere or just keep talking one-on-one. It's a lot of this stuff is miscommunication, misunderstandings, and it's can't we all just get along?
A lot of warping out there, but I think a lot of ChaserCon was helpful too. Obviously the people that saw that stream or were at ChaserCon saw that, so I might chop that part out and make it public again for a while.
But only if you think it would be helpful.
I definitely think it would be helpful. I mean, I was looking forward to hearing you speak about it because obviously some of these issues didn't just come up in the last week or 3 weeks or whatever. So I think some of it has been boiling for a while, and I think the ChaserCon talk helped. I hope this helped. You're not going to please everybody, and we can try to move forward and come up with better ways to do things. And I probably should have been a ham at some point, but I've never not been able to pick up the phone and make a call. Everybody's what if the cell towers go down? Well, if they're going down, then I'm too late making the call because
bad things are happening.
Bad things are happening. So, let's see what we can do from here.
And there are some other issues on the amateur radio side. For example, if storm chasers are making money at what they're doing, using amateur radio can be a no-no. It can be against the rules. So.
Well, that's true. I didn't think about that.
So I mean, there's a lot of things involved here. And I still have a question. Did he actually try to make a report?
No, I think he was just checking in, and then the audio is out there somewhere. And again, I don't know
and I've heard, Corey, I've heard part of it,
Yeah.
but I never got the impression that he was trying to make a report. Which my understanding of a closed net is that it's their own people, and it's not for any chit chat kind of thing. So to just kind of log in or check in is not what they're looking for. They're waiting for reports. So
yeah, and I heard that directly from them. I heard that if he had been making a report, had he had something to report, like I've got golf ball size hail or whatever, then they would have taken the report. But it was just the fact that it was a check-in, and I don't really understand it. But
I mean, Dan's a friend of mine. I can't, whatever. But it sounded like maybe there had been a similar incident like a couple years prior that was referred to on there as well.
I saw something about that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was with Daniel or just another person or whatever, but it sounded like the net controller knew Daniel from some previous thing, and it sounded like maybe there was already some bias against him there.
There might have been.
And who knows? I don't know.
Well, in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, when I was there, we operated a closed net, but if somebody passing through wanted to check in, we usually accepted it, but we asked them not to chit-chat. If they wanted to call somebody else and they wanted to chat, then we offered several different frequencies that they could go to, because we were reserving that repeater and that frequency for storm reports if there were any.
Right.
Sure, and I think the one thing that the footnote to some of this, the epilogue, is that the ARRL did come out and say, basically you have to allow these reports to come through from credible sources, and unfortunately the Aries team went and decided to basically disassociate itself from Aries so that it didn't have to follow those rules, and I don't know if that's I don't know if that proves anything. I'm just saying it looks like they just definitely want to keep it closed to their people, period. And whether that's right or wrong, somebody will decide that down the road.
It is certainly at the what do you want to say here? It's certainly their right, if they're using their amateur radio equipment to close the net. I think it sets a very bad precedence from the amateur radio community to not accept reports that are important. And that's why I was trying to figure out if Daniel was actually making a report or he was just checking in.
I think he was trying to get the permission to make a report should he need to. He's a very enthusiastic reporter, let's say. So I mean, he's going to report every single thing. And if there was a previous incident, I think he was trying to hit, an Oklahoma repeater and couldn't get on it anymore.
He had actually been on an Oklahoma repeater earlier in the evening, because I was listening to him. I didn't know who it was at the time, but heard this very unique accent. I could hear it across the room. I was working severe weather, and I guess he had moved. If he was moving south with the storms, or he wanted to, continue to be able to make reports, and it was recommended we'll go to this frequency in Wichita Falls, and I didn't hear all that going on the air, but I did hear his voice on the air that night.
Yeah.
Well, the National Weather Service and the ARRL, the Amateur Radio Relay League, which is the kind of the national organization of amateur radio, they have a memorandum of understanding, as I recall, Aries and Races are both mentioned. Races is more government affiliation, and Aries is more amateur radio affiliation kind of thing.
And unfortunately, the group in Wichita Falls has removed themselves from that. So
from either one, yeah.
Yep. So now they're just doing their own thing.
Well, however, they haven't removed themselves from FCC rules.
They have not, and there's been a lot of question about that over the last week too. And I mean, I deal with that enough on radio and TV.
Yeah, and again, if he has a legitimate report and they're refusing a legitimate report, they're in problems, because they're violating certainly violating the intent of their licenses. At least that would be my opinion.
Public service. It's all about public service, right?
And public service is just a huge part of amateur radio. So, oh well.
Well, I don't think he's going to jump on that frequency anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, and
another thing I didn't get to. I'm sorry. Another thing I didn't get to mention is it was, and I'm not knocking him for just using amateur radio. It's convenient. You got a microphone, pick it up and talk. But I want, chasers and every spotter needs to know that there are multiple ways to get reports to us. So if you can't get us on the amateur radio, there's a spotter network, there's online, there's cell phones, there's, and you report using the tool that's most convenient and easiest. And another thing I didn't get to say is how much I appreciate him and any chaser taking the time out to do any kind of reporting on any way, because that's got to be a pain when you're out there and you are taking time. You are literally reducing the chances of you accomplishing your goal when you're, oh, let me find the Weather Service number, let me call them. Oh, that's a pain, and I appreciate that. And
before Spotter Network, I mean, we had the 800 numbers weren't exactly public knowledge, and everybody would share these like Excel documents and things with 800 numbers, and Daniel tried calling one last night. I don't know if you've seen his latest video, but it went to an escort line or something. Oh! So I mean, it's still a little bit rocky at times, but what you say about it being a pain, it's not, I mean, it's an inconvenience, but it's one that I do think most chasers will do, especially if it's not pea-size hail or a little bit of street flooding. I mean, if it's a life-threatening situation, and there was one big question I didn't get to, and that was reports via Twitter, and I think you guys had touched on that on previous WeatherBrains episodes after the Amarillo situation, but I mean, and again, Amarillo took the one that I gave the other day, but I made sure I said where it was, what it was, who reported it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is a Twitter report enough information most times, and do you have enough staff to monitor that?
That's it varies. I mean, on April a day like April 10th, an event like that, we would have seen it. You just have to do it right and mention the office and put all the information in there, or at least be responsive if you give a report and we say, where was the location, then, and that was some of the Amarillo incident business that went on, and I think we've learned stuff from that. But I mean, my office will take the report anyway and get it to us. The quicker the better. If it's a tornado, the phone is best, amateur radio, but Twitter works too, but you've got to craft it so that it has all the necessary information and mentions the right office.
And I think for chasers, for me personally, all last year, every single report that I made was through Twitter, and I'll tell you why. And that was because I'm usually on the phone doing a phoner with the TV station. So the voice circuit is tied up on my phone. I'm streaming live video, so my computer is got a big process running to process video and send it out. And so the one thing that I can do while I'm talking into the speakerphone is send a message to 40404, and it tweets directly onto my Twitter. And as long as I do at NWS Twin Cities, they get it. And I mean, for me, that's the way I'm going to keep doing it, and I know a lot of other chasers are going to. And like I said, Amarillo took the one the other day with no problem. Maybe they've done some training upgrades, put people on things, whatever. I just want to make sure that in the new day and age that we're using all avenues, like you said, but I wanted to make sure that you realize that for some of us, Twitter is kind of where it's at for that information.
Well, that makes sense. I've never thought of all the other methods being tied up with other things, so that's good to know. And I like Twitter.
I mean, Spotter Network can be a pain. I mean, especially if you don't have great cell signal, you can always get a text message out to Twitter. And so there's just see right there, we've already had a breakthrough.
I wish we could text. I wish we had a way easily where you could text a Weather Service office. That would be ideal, because most people text, and that just seems like an easier way. And but and another cool thing about Twitter is everybody sees it. If you
media sees it.
It's like you're sharing it with us, but you're also sharing it with the media, and everybody sees it at the same time.
And
as long as it's good information.
And there's a certain element of the Twitter, putting it out on Twitter, is that if somebody else sees it and says, no, I'm not seeing that, they'll probably chime in and say that. Right. Whereas if it's a direct report to the Weather Service, you have to sort of take it at face value.
Yeah.
Has dual pole with CC and everything, has that replaced any field reports? Is that, are you still looking for the same amount of reports, or are you like, yeah, God, if it's a wedge, we know, or...
No. I would never turn down a report or information regardless. The radar upgrades haven't done anything to reduce the need for people and eyes on the storm. I mean, dual pole and the CC and all that stuff is helpful, especially at night and in rural areas. I'm spoiled here, though.
If you see, it show up on CC on row HV for us academic geeks, if you see that, it's too late.
It's happening. Yeah,
it's happening. That's the problem. Yeah.
So, the real value that both spotters and chasers provide is being able to look at the bottom of the storm and tell me what's hanging out from underneath it. I can see the radar data. Right. What are you seeing underneath this? What does that map to? And in a lot of cases, it's on a per storm basis. That what may, we've had some signatures around here just this year that I would have told you looking at the radar would have been producing nasty damage, would be tearing up homes and towns and everything. And we talked to people who are actually underneath it and are like, well, it's definitely rotating, but that's it. There's nothing on the ground. It's not doing anything. So at the end of the day, I mean, radar data is a tool. It is one tool of many. It is certainly not the only tool we have. And that eyes on the ground, be it spotters, chasers, whatever, from both, I think is a good thing. So I'd agree with Rick. As a TV guy, I wouldn't want the reports to stop coming. Don't assume that just because I have a dual pole that I don't need it. That's quite the opposite.
That'll never go away. I mean, I don't see the need for that ever going away. And Nate's right. It's cool to get a hail report. I mean, most of the reports are hail or a tree down or something. But the real value, anybody that's observing a storm, is if you can give us something that describes, or streaming video is even better than a verbal description or a tweet, something that has some predictive value to say, okay, I see what the radar is saying, but what is the storm doing underneath? Is it, and it's just as important to give us information to keep us from issuing a tornado warning as it is to cause us to issue a tornado warning. Sometimes that's even more important to me. Because I don't want to do it if we don't have to.
Our streams, especially in South Dakota, where I was for 12, 15 years, where we started Severe Studios. Now I'm in Minneapolis, but most of the time the streaming video was used to not issue a warning and not increase that false alarm ratio that every office is trying to get down. But they, and that leads me to another question is, what would make it easier for you to use the streams? Is there anything that drives you crazy? I mean, I know you've got it on 3, 4, 5 different platforms, and now you got Facebook streaming and Periscope and all this kind of stuff. But from the the chaser streaming platforms, what would make it easier for you to use, if anything?
If you could give every weather service office more bandwidth, that would honestly, that's one of the biggest problems. We're lucky in our office because we have alternative ways to get internet sometimes that give us more bandwidth. But I think that's one of the main limitations is in a weather service office is the bandwidth. But as far as using it, I mean, having a good information on where the chaser is, obviously. It's also helpful to know which way they're looking, which way their camera's pointing, and that's hard. That's hard. And we've called people and asked them, could you move a little bit to the left, that kind of thing. And they were always very cool about it. But
there's a cheap solution to this. If the camera is mounted physically in the car, and I know not all of them are, but if it's physically mounted in the car, buy a little whiskey compass, something about yay big, and just mount it in front of the camera's view. It doesn't have to be very big, but it would give you just a quickie, $5 and a little bit of glue, and you've got something there that would give viewers a sense of what direction you're looking. We've got that for our traffic cameras here in North Carolina that we deal with. That wherever the camera is pointing, it's got a sensor in it that knows that, okay, I'm mounted this direction, and so it'll tell you what direction the camera's pointing. I can't tell you how many times that has saved me from making a complete fool of myself on live television. Cool. So I think being able to that may be a cheap solution. I know that's you have to get everybody to do it, but at the same time it could be a fairly inexpensive solve to that problem.
What about audio, Rick? Is that not every chaser streams with audio, but a lot of them give a rolling commentary. Do you even have time to listen to audio on the stream?
We do because, well, it depends on the event and office to office.
I'm going to say a big event with three,
big
four,
event. If we've got
21
somebody dedicated to it, then somebody may be watching, and sometimes the audio might help. I mean, obviously the video is most important, and if it's clear and we know which direction they're looking, and it's, it can be really beneficial. Like you said, we've used it. We've probably used it more to not issue tornado warnings than we have, because we're getting information from all these sources that say rotating wall cloud or violent upward motion or violent rotation, and then we look at a stream and we're like, is that the same storm that we're getting these reports from? Because that doesn't look anything like what we've been seeing. So it to me, and some people don't like this, but I don't care if you've been to a spotter class. I don't care what your background is. If you've got a good high quality video stream and you can point it to the right spot and we can see the video, we can do a lot with it from there. So it is huge. But the audio, I don't know. It depends on, I guess, what was on it.
Okay. Just curious, because there's some people, Daniel's a good example, and Kelly Williamson and a few other people that are out there all the time. Obviously, he's on the Weather Channel now, but he's still, it's like a rolling commentary the whole time he's out there, and anybody that dipped into his audio for 10 seconds would get pretty clear understanding of where he was looking and what it was doing, and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's only so many things you can concentrate on one time going in your ear too.
Yeah, because we're also monitoring the local TV, their chasers, and so anyway, yeah, and that's going to vary from office to office. But
and I'll tell you, there's nothing more that I like that when somebody at a weather service office like you or anywhere else shows the big board and it's got our website up there. That again, this whole thing was started because of that. It was the TV stations that came to me and said, you know what, we'll give you money if we can put that stream on television. And I went, okay. So I was like, I'm not going to turn it down. But the whole thing was, was started to be the eyes for the Weather Service office, and the Sioux Falls National Weather Service and Aberdeen were our kind of our guinea pigs with that, and they got to reap the benefits of that for 2 or 3 years before the rest of the world. So so yeah, nothing but good things, and it all did start from that. So.
Well, we do appreciate it, and everybody that takes the time. And I was talking to some TV chasers here locally recently, and I didn't really put it all together that your data, you've got to have a good data plan. I mean, you're streaming this video, and it's not free. It's an expense and not only inconvenience and equipment, but real money every month with your phone bill. And I was like, wow, I never thought of that. That's something to think about.
If you don't have somebody with you, you are the king of multitasking. It may be reckless, but it's funny the amount of people that get in my car and I'm changing the radio, eating a cheeseburger, steering with my knee, and we're driving down the road, and they're like, we're going to die. And I'm like, no, you're not, because, I don't have a camcorder and a cell phone and, the 14 other things that I normally do when I'm storm chasing. But I mean, you do have to get really good at multitasking. And then, if you're a media chaser, it just adds another layer on top of it, because you've got, the earpiece, and you're listening for cues, and you're, making sure that you're, again, not dropping words you shouldn't drop on national television. And so, and that, I mean, that's why I don't chase. Honestly, that's why I don't chase with audio. Everybody, turn on your audio. When things are not going well, it's a tirade. It's a string of nasty words.
Only you hadn't said fudge.
Yes, no, I did not say fudge. But
yeah, I've been chasing before. I would also not be streaming my audio probably.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, I got to run.
Yep.
I don't know about you guys, but I got to check out.
Yep.
Great
Thanks
talking.
again, Corey.
Thanks, Corey. See you guys later.
Yep,
bye, Kevin.
So this is going to be interesting. Let's come in here and see what we got going on here. I was hoping for once that I would actually come back in here and the WeatherBrains would still be going on. But anyway, for those watching on the WeatherBrains stream, thanks a lot. Very interesting dialogue and a very needed conversation tonight. And I'm hoping that it will continue and we will continue to talk with each other. And, again, it was a good show. And if you didn't get a chance to see it or watch it, you can listen. It'll be up on all the podcast apps after midnight tonight. So WeatherBrains, we're going to turn you off. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next Monday night. We're over here on Song of the Night on Periscope if you want to join us. So WeatherBrains, good night to you.